Guys? We had a 3-1 day yesterday. It was a good day overall. Good day to be a Boston sports fan as well. As not only did the Celtics win and cover for my bet and look good and win in a blowout, Bruins won to kind of take control of that series. Although you never know, they were up 3-1 last year in the series against Florida and had the same type of situation where they had two of the remaining three games at home if necessary. And we know how that turned out. But hopefully they can get through that series. And the Red Sox won in a game that nobody probably really cares about. Boston was flooded, or it's still flooded, with Chicago Cubs fans out for this interleague series here. A lot of Cubs fans showing up. Good turnout from the Cubs fan base here. But the Red Sox were able to take game two of that series 17-0. It was just a weird pitching situation where neither starting pitcher, I don't think, went very deep into the game, but the Cubs pitching just got destroyed. All right, let's talk about today. I'm going to have a play, I think, in every sport. I'm hesitant a little bit on the NBA one, but we'll see. NHL and NBA each have 4 playoff games yet again today. Winnipeg at Colorado. This is game 4, I believe. Colorado took the lead in the series, I'm pretty sure, in the last game. They're up 2-1 now in the series. I have been saying I think Colorado's the better team. In this game, they're down from minus 160 to minus 153. They have 79% of the tickets, but 89% of the cash on them. So it looks like the line's moving down on them. Cash discrepancy, however, is on Colorado. Tough to get a read on this one. I'm not really sure what the read is going to be on this one. This is the first game up in the afternoon. You could argue that maybe Winnipeg will have a bounce back after playing pretty badly in the last 2 games, but you could also argue that the series has definitely been more at like Colorado's preferred style of game, I would say, or Winnipeg likes to play these ugly, low-scoring games and get their goaltending in there, and their defense/goaltending has obviously not been good in this series. Colorado has put up at least 5 goals in all 3 games in the series. Colorado's been out shooting them, I think, in a lot of cases. They did lose the face-off battle in the last game somehow, but Colorado actually was down 2-1 in that game and scored 5 goals in the third period, including an empty net. Does that mean Colorado's going to be a little bit overvalued? I'm not sure. The line is actually down on Colorado from where it was in the previous game, so there's no real zigzag there. So I don't know. It's a tough one to read because I think Colorado's just the better team and they're playing better in the series. It's more at their style of pace, and you're actually not getting less value on Colorado in this one than you did in the previous game. You're actually kind of getting more if you actually like that side. But Winnipeg could actually show up, play a good game, and bounce back in that one. Tough game to gauge. The next game up is the game I'm actually going to be on, which is going to be on the Nashville Predators. That's the side I'm going to play here. Vancouver-Nashville. Vancouver took a 2-1 series lead in game 3, but if you look at that, Nashville completely dominated that game at home, man. I mean, Nashville played, I think, well in one of the 2 games on the road. Obviously, the game that they won was the better of those 2 games. They haven't been playing poorly in this series, but coming back home, Nashville completely dominated in that home game. 63% face-off percentage, which is insane. They out-hit Vancouver 32-25, although they hadn't been the more physical team in the games in Vancouver, I don't think. And they outshot Vancouver 30-12 in the game, which you could argue maybe some of that was because they were losing, but they were only losing 1-0 into the second period. Both Vancouver goals in the game were on power plays. So Vancouver, they got 2 goals on only 12 shots. A lot tells me that Vancouver got outplayed by Nashville in that game. So I'm going to go on Nashville here to make the adjustments here, readjust and play better in this one, even though you're getting a little bit of a heavier price on this. Nashville was minus 120 in that one. They're in the minus 120s in this game, which I still think is fine. It looks like they're actually up from minus 113 up to minus 126, 81% of the tickets on them, 96% of the cash. So public, but they do have the cash discrepancy. You can find them at minus 122. That is what I'm going to do there because I think the score in game 3 was misleading. Nashville seems like they're outplaying Vancouver at home, or they did in that game. And now that they're down 2-1, I think you're going to get a good effort out of Nashville. I think you could see a bounce back from Saros. Or Saros didn't even really play that bad, I don't think. I assume he was in net in that game. Vancouver's both goals were with the man advantage, man, in that game. So a lot of things that are misleading in that one. Just Nashville really did not score enough in that one. Likely, they will probably score more than one goal in this one. Night games in the NHL, Rangers, Washington. Rangers have taken a 3-0 series lead. Now they're up minus 177 to minus 195 now, but 89% of the tickets on them and 73% of the cash. So they're public, as expected, as usual. The Rangers, I mean, they've had the upper hand in the series. They're the better team, obviously. They're a big road favorite, but they do have less of the cash than the tickets. And as I mentioned yesterday, a 3-0 series lead in the NHL is not the same as it is in the NBA, where these teams don't feel like they're as dead as they do in the NBA, so they tend to show up. Although the Lakers actually did show up and win down 3-0 yesterday. So you are still talking about the team that's down 0-3 is in desperation mode, and we're again talking about an NHL team here who's a home underdog in total desperation mode. So I would not want to lay that price with the Rangers, that's for sure. I said I leaned to both teams in this situation yesterday, and they both won outright. With the Islanders and Tampa Bay both staying alive. I would lean that way in this one, too, to Washington. You could potentially play like a puck line play on this one or something like that if you really want to, but I would not lay it with the Rangers there. It also tends to be the case where when a team is up 3-0, it's not just that the other team's totally desperate and there's, quote unquote, that revenge angle, but it's not really revenge. What it really is that the other team, if they've won all the games in the series so far, they kind of let up, even mentally a little bit. You kind of you have a tendency to let up a little bit. Oh, we're obviously the better team here. We've had a really easy time in the series. So you might see a little bit of that mental let up there from that team up against that desperate team, which is, I believe, what happened in both of those games in that situation yesterday. And then Edmonton, LA, the late game. Edmonton's sitting at minus 145. Not much movement there, if any. 69% of the tickets on them, so they are public, with 78% of the cash on Edmonton. I took Edmonton in game 3, and won on that one. Edmonton has looked pretty decent so far. In the series, they've scored a lot of goals in the series. The lowest goal total by far was the Kings, scoring only 1 in that game. I do think Edmonton's the better team. Will the Kings bounce back after such a lopsided loss? That's possibly going to be the case. Edmonton did outplay them, but the Kings did put in some physicality there. They're the more physical team, and even though Edmonton's the better offensive team, it is possible that we see LA put in a better performance in this one. But Edmonton's still the better team. Odds makers are telling you that. So I don't know what to think about that game, really. That's how I feel about all these NHL games here. I did win on the Dallas Stars yesterday, even though it went into overtime. Dallas, they outshot Vegas, man. They were outshooting them by a ton. It should not have even been as close as it was. It had to go to overtime for Dallas to win that game. Dallas outplayed Vegas in that game, outshot them. They finally got a little bit of revenge against Vegas, finally getting over the hump and winning that game there. So maybe that'll give Dallas a little bit of momentum, but just figured I'd comment on that game too. Got that one. And then just because I'm commenting on yesterday's games, the only game that I lost was that over where the Oakland A's, they did not do their part, man, because if they had scored 1 run in that entire game, it would have at least pushed the over. I just needed them to score 2 runs to hit that over, as Baltimore scored 7 runs in the game, which obviously was fine. They did their part. Oakland certainly did not. I expected a worse performance from Cole Irvin, certainly, from Baltimore in that game. So that one just didn't hit. It came within 1 run of the total there, with Baltimore being the only team scoring at all. That's unfortunate. Did not expect Oakland to get blanked, as bad as their offense is. Cole Irvin, not a very good pitcher, and didn't have good stats against Oakland. So that's unfortunate. But then Washington Nationals won in a blowout, so at least that helped. Well, that game was closer early. Miami actually had a 1-0 lead early, and then Washington started putting it on in the 4th or 5th inning and started scoring a bunch, and scored a bunch late as well. And actually, Miami didn't score again until the 9th inning, I think. So they scored in the 1st and the 9th and didn't score in any other innings. All right, NBA playoffs, Knicks, Sixers. NBA, this is hard for me to read these games today, man. Knicks and Sixers. Sixers up from 5 to 5.5 at home. This is a 2-1 series now with the Sixers blowing leads, decent leads in both games at New York, and then winning Game 3 at home. 69% of the tickets on the Sixers, 63% of the cash. So they are public, have a little bit less of the cash, even though it looks like the line has maybe moved up on them a little bit from 5 to 5.5. So the line movement looks like it's on the Sixers, even though the cash coming in looks like it might not totally be on the Sixers here. This is a hard one to read, man, because you could argue the Knicks will bounce back from not playing as well in that game. Or you could argue the Sixers are the better team. They're playing better at home. They could have won all 3 games in the series, potentially. You could argue they've even been the better team in the series. So this is a tough read here for me on this one, man. So I don't know what to think on this one. And generally, as I keep saying, like the totals in some of these middle games in the series, game 4s, where these teams just played in this venue and it's a quick turnaround time, I tend to not like looking towards unders in games in the middle of the series like this. You tend to get the defensive intensity kind of starts to like lapse a little bit with these teams not being rested. And then once you get to games like 6, 7, if you get to a game 5 or 7 in a tied series, then you see like more defensive intensity again. And you tend to see like a trend towards the unders again in those. But I don't do a whole lot with the totals, but that's just kind of generally what happens. Clippers, Mavs. Mavs are sitting at 5.5, maybe up to 5.5 with juice. 68% of the tickets on the Clippers. These are the afternoon games, by the way. 64% of the cash, though, on the Mavs. So it looks like there's pros Joes situation going on here. Pros versus Joes, or it looks like the Joes are coming in taking the Clippers to bounce back. And I could see arguments for that. Of course, the zigzag. The Clippers have not played well in the last 2 games here. The Mavs have taken a 2-1 series lead after losing game 1. Mavs won on the road in game 2 and then won at home in game 3. And I believe they won pretty easily. So you could argue that the Clippers are going to have the adjustments to make here. So I could see that being the case, although it looks like the market is disagreeing with that pretty strongly. Clippers have not looked very good with Kawhi Leonard back in there. They've lost both games with him. His offense has really not been good. Much below what you expect out of him, but he's also working his way back, and he was better in the last game than he was in the first game back. So is he going to continue to improve? You could argue that he might as he gets used to playing again. Maybe we'll see some improvement out of Leonard there. And the Mavs, Luka Doncic is on the injury report, although this line being almost no different from the previous game would kind of indicate that he's probably going to play and just play through whatever this injury is with him, even though he's listed as questionable right now. But based on the line, I'm expecting that he will play in this one. But how effective is he going to be? It's a little bit of a question. We don't know. So this game is a bit hard to read for a few different reasons there. Staying off of that one, Bucks, Pacers. I think that I might have to jump in on this one, on the Milwaukee Bucks, if this line continues to move in the direction that it's headed. Like, this is headed possibly in the direction of 10 here on the Pacers now. Pacers up from 6 to going through the 9 with juice. Could wind up being minus 10. We see 73% of the tickets on the Bucks, though, and 59% of the cash over on the other side of the Pacers. So we do see the Bucks as a public road underdog here, with the Pacers actually getting more of the cash. But how much of that is just because some of the bettors were coming in at like the lower number on the Pacers, if there was a lower number at any point? Because the reason why this line has moved so much, this was not an adjustment because of the respected bettors coming in on it. This was an adjustment because the Pacers had to be moved up because Damian Lillard is now hurt and he's doubtful. He is likely not going to play. He has like a strained Achilles or something like that. He's, based on this line, he's not going to be playing. So Giannis is still out. So we still have no idea when he's coming back. So this Bucks team is really beat up, man. But I think that this line is probably just too much of an overreaction at this point. I think you might be getting an injured player theory spot on the Bucks here again. I played the Bucks in game 1 because I thought they were being undervalued. I thought they were probably the better team and the team that had more experience and the better defense. And you know that I like all that. Game 1, Lillard had a huge game in that one. Put the team on his back, basically, and had a huge first half and a terrible second half in that game. But the Bucks won in a blowout. And since then, they haven't won. Pacers won both games after that. But the Pacers had a blowout win in game 2, but then the Bucks, as I said, I thought the Bucks were actually being shortchanged in the line in game 3 with the Pacers up to a 6-point favorite. I thought that was over-adjusted based on the game 2 results and Giannis still being out. Bucks came in and they played pretty well, and the game went into overtime, but the Pacers wound up winning in overtime. But is a similar thing going to happen? Like, are we just getting too many points with the Bucks yet again? I think you could argue, yes, this is an injured player theory spot. You still have the Bucks having the experience edge, having I think the coach that has the more playoff experience, although less experience with the current team that he's with Doc Rivers and Rick Carlisle, certainly a good coach as well. But the Bucks also, you're getting a ton of points now with the Bucks team that actually has the better defense and is the team that likes to slow the pace a little bit. Pacers like to push the pace. They didn't completely do that in game one. The game was decently high scoring, but not as high scoring as the Pacers want to play. A game going into the 110s, overtime. So it was basically around 100, whatever in regulation. Pacers want to play a little bit higher scoring than that. So the Bucks were able to hang in that game, and it could happen again. And with the Bucks not having Lillard now in this one, I think you're getting just so many points with the Bucks at this point. It's kind of hard to pass it up, man. Because the injured player theory, you have the team come in and the Bucks not only are going to be playing in kind of desperation mode because they can't really afford to fall down 3-1, even though they will have some home games left. They're going to want to even up this series, so the Bucks might have a little bit more motivation for that reason, even though the Pacers know that the Bucks played them pretty well in the previous game. But with Lillard and Giannis both now out, with Lillard now out, you're getting more value in the line. You're getting more points in the line. But the Bucks, it's the injured player theory, man. That first game with that star player out, you tend to see that team step it up and play better basketball and play with a lot of intensity in that first game to accommodate for that injured player. Whereas you see the other team, we won this previous game when they had Lillard in there. So you see that team maybe get a little bit more complacent and let up, which is why the injured player theory is a pretty strong angle. And I think this is actually the strongest play on the NBA card, because I don't think this is a very strong NBA card, but I think the strongest play, other than maybe actually playing the over maybe in the Clippers-Mavs game, that has been a very low-scoring series, kind of ridiculously so. That game, the total's gone all the way down to 209 now, which I think is I think that's double-digit points below where it was at the beginning of the series. And it's all adjusted just based on how that series has been playing out. So you could potentially finally find value on an over in that Clippers-Mavs game, especially in the middle of the series where the teams have played a bunch of games in quick succession, and maybe their defense is not well rested now at this point too. So I could see playing the over in that one, but I like the Bucks plus all these points in this one, man. I think you're going to see them step up to accommodate for that injury. Down 2-1, knowing that now they have another star player injured, I think you're going to see a big effort from that Bucks team, and I think they're the good enough team with enough experience, and the Pacers have a bad enough defense that I think you could see the Bucks still be able to put up some points in this game, slow the pace down a bit, and still hang within a giant number like this. But as I was saying, you will also kind of see that team that's in the other side of the injured player theory, the team that's playing against the team with the injured player, get a little bit complacent if they won that previous game, thinking, we beat them without that player. Certainly we're going to we beat them with that player. Certainly we're going to be able to beat them without that player. No sweat, right? So you could see the Pacers maybe just get a little bit overconfident there too. So I haven't played this one yet, but I think I may throw this on the card. Play the Bucks. The best you can get right now is 9.5. You can get it with reduced juice. It could potentially go to 10. I think we're just seeing too much of an overreaction in the line there. So I think we'll take the Bucks plus the huge amount of points there. And then T-Wolves Suns. The T-Wolves, this is a 3-0 series now. The T-Wolves have been dominated by the Suns in the recent years and this season, going 0-3 against them. But as I mentioned, Towns was out in one of those games. One of the games was one of the first games that he was back, I think. And then the other game was that final regular season game where the Suns were playing to avoid the play-in, so they had a lot more motivation there. The Suns, they're just not a very deep team, man, which is really the problem with them. All of their scoring basically comes from the big three on the team, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. So T-Wolves are the better defensive team, and they're maybe showing that, hey, we're about to take the next step here in this league. With the Suns having been, the team that has the more runs in the playoffs, they have more playoff experience. They're the more established team. But now the T-Wolves, you may say that they've now kind of established themselves. They're almost certainly going to win this series at this point. They're sitting at a 1-point road favorite here. 57% of the cash on them, but 59% of the tickets on the Suns. So it does look like actually the public is still kind of coming in on the Suns here as the home underdog. T-Wolves getting the money. This line was a 4-point Suns favorite, though, at home. So if you like the T-Wolves side, just thinking that the Suns are just kind of a dead team now, you're not really getting any value with the T-Wolves being a road favorite now. And the Suns started the series as the favorite in the market to win the series, as the thought was that, well, the Suns are the more experienced team. They're actually the slightly better team here. T-Wolves proving everybody wrong there. I had the T-Wolves in game one because I thought that was a good individual game spot there, but I had the Suns in both the other two games, and they did not zag to the zig. They have not played well at all. So I would not want to play the Suns here, even though they're getting a point now at home and their lives are completely on the line. So you're probably going to get a desperate Suns team. So I don't know what you're going to see out of the Suns here, man. Are they going to be like desperate and playing with a lot of motivation? And are you going to see the T-Wolves maybe play a little bit complacent, like maybe you saw out of the Denver-LA game last night? Or are you going to see the Suns just roll over and die? It's really tough to gauge, man. But if you think that that's the case and you like the T-Wolves you're not really getting much value there. Because if this was just kind of a regular game, you'd see the Suns being a home favorite here. The Suns, as we've seen throughout the series, the Suns have been lined as like the better team. And now they're not only not even getting the home court advantage, but the T-Wolves have actually shifted to the favorite. That's just kind of ridiculous. It's tough to gauge on that one. Then moving over to Major League Baseball, try to get through this one quick. I'm going to be on two unders, two totals, two full game unders, going back to my bread and butter here. The first one up is going to be in the afternoon. Or actually, we'll talk about the non-total first. I have a side in Dodgers-Toronto. I'm going to play the Toronto Blue Jays, man. They've been playing like total ass. This is like you have two teams moving in complete opposite directions. The Toronto Blue Jays haven't won since the first game of the Royals series, and they've now lost 5 games in a row, losing 3 to the Royals, losing 2 to the Dodgers. But now we're reaching a point where Toronto's in that highly motivated sweep avoiding spot where they're going to try to avoid the sweep, man. Toronto, they've been playing below their potential, man. Like they have Ohtani. They have what was I even going to say? They have a lot of good hitters. Ohtani did beat Toronto yesterday with Ohtani hit a home run for the Dodgers yesterday. So he came into Toronto and I don't know what I was reading there. I'm just reading some of these articles here on the front page there and not thinking about what I'm saying here. Blah, whatever. But Toronto, they have a lot of good players, man, and they just have not been living up to their to what their potential is based on their personnel. They have a lot of good players, man. I was thinking of Justin Turner because he's facing his former team here because he's on Toronto here and he is playing against the Dodgers here. Now, I was going to say Toronto has Justin Turner. I mean, they have a bunch of decent players on this team. They've just been very much underperforming so far, mostly recently, though, because they were doing decently on the season up until this recent bad stretch. So I think we're going to see them start to turn it around a little bit, and they're in that sweep avoiding role where you tend to see a team play with a bit more motivation when they're trying to avoid the sweep. That is the case with Toronto, whereas the Dodgers might come in here and think, we just totally destroyed this team to the tune of 16-4 over the course of these 2 games. Dodgers won 12-2 and 4-2. Dodgers might be just getting a little bit complacent, thinking, we easily beat this Toronto team. We've handled them. And the Dodgers might even be looking ahead to their divisional series up next with Arizona, even though Arizona has not been playing well this year. Still kind of a big series because Arizona made the World Series last year, and the Dodgers are going to want to prove something and beat that Arizona team and prove that they are the top team in that NL West division there, which I think is probably kind of undisputable at this point. But still, you could argue that that's going to be a big divisional series coming up for the Dodgers that starts tomorrow. So are they going to overlook Toronto in the spot where they've already taken both of the first 2 games in the series? I think that might very well be the case. And what we're looking at here, well, we can look at what the bullpens did yesterday. I think the bullpen situation is just kind of a little bit of a wash, I would say, as the Dodgers had to use a few of their better relievers to finish the game. They used their closer. They used a couple of their best relievers to finish that game off yesterday. Used 3 relievers. Toronto used 4 of theirs. A couple of their better relievers as well. So Toronto did use 1 more reliever, but I think the bullpen situation is kind of a wash here. And then looking at the starting pitching matchup, I just don't think that this matchup is good for the Dodgers, man. They have Michael Grove coming in. He's a young guy still. He's only 27, but his stats this year, not good, man. He's been coming out of the bullpen all season, so now he's being thrust into a spot start, basically, because the Dodgers, I guess, need somebody to start this game, and he's coming out of the bullpen, so he's only made bullpen appearances this season, and usually that means he's probably not going to go deep into this game, so the Dodgers are going to have to probably dip into the bullpen earlier than Toronto's going to have to. And Grove's stats, even out of the bullpen this season, not very impressive, even though his 18 strikeouts in 15 innings is impressive. He's got 6 walks, which is a little high, but he's also allowed 10 runs. He's got a 6 ERA this year, 1.33 whip, not that good either. And on his career, his stats really aren't much better. He did start 12 games for the Dodgers last year and 6 games the year before that, I should say. And over his career, he's got a 5.72 ERA and 1.45 whip, so none of those stats are good. 35 walks, kind of too high, although he has 115 strikeouts and 113 and a third, so the strikeout number is decent, but he's been getting knocked around, giving up too many hits. He's just not a very good pitcher, and now they're trying to kind of I think establish him as a relief pitcher now, or maybe, I don't know what they were doing with him. Maybe I think that they kind of like him more as a reliever there, just because he can come in and strike out some guys and not have to try to go deep into games or whatever. But now he's having to make a start here after not having started a game this season so far and pitching out of the bullpen, which I think tends to be a spot where that pitcher kind of has to adjust and they can kind of struggle to adjust. And like I said, usually they don't go deep into that particular game when that's the case. And looking at his stats against Toronto, they're not great. Toronto has 5 hitters who have seen him before. They're 5 for 17 off him lifetime with 2 home runs. He does have a 6.0 strikeout walk ratio against him, but Toronto's hitters 294 off of him lifetime with a 941 batting average. So I think Grove is the significantly worse of the 2 starters here. And on the other side, we have Kevin Gausman, who is going to look to be bouncing back. I think we're maybe getting a little bit of value on Gausman here because he's been bad to start the season at 0-3. Toronto has only won his first start, and he didn't go deep enough into the game to get the decision. And then they've lost every game that he started since then. He's got a 5.57 ERA, 1.57 whip, so those stats are pretty bad. But he does have an 18-6 strikeout walk ratio in 21 innings, so that's not too bad. He's allowed 27 hits, 13 earned runs, and 3 home runs, so that's where the problems have come in, really. Gausman, he's a much better pitcher, though, than these stats look. He's been one of the best pitchers in this Toronto staff, basically since he's been there. And last couple of seasons, put up really good numbers. He had a pretty high strikeout rate, way more strikeouts than innings pitched. His walk numbers weren't bad either. So he's been a good pitcher, a good whip, sub 1.2 last year, ERA in the 3s, both seasons they've had him. So Gausman, I expect that he's going to start moving back towards what we know that he is. He's going to start pitching like he has the last few years, I would imagine. I would have to expect. And he had a decent outing in his most recent game against the Kansas City Royals, even though they lost the game 3-2. He allowed 3 runs, but none of them were earned. It was all on this error, I believe, by Vlad Guerrero Jr., who he's another one of these guys that's one of the great hitters on this Toronto team. This Toronto team, and they're still dangerous, man. They have a good offense, and they have one of their best pitchers going today, and a pitcher who can certainly go deeper into a game than Grove can, I would have to imagine. So I like Toronto for all these reasons in this game, man. And you got Gausman starting here. He's started to maybe pitch a little bit better. And in the game before that Kansas City game, it was his second game of the season against the Yankees after he got wrecked in probably his worst start of the season. He had bad starts against the Yankees and against the Rockies somehow. But against the Yankees, he got wrecked. But then in the most recent game against the Yankees, he actually played better. So 2 of his starts this season have been against that good Yankees lineup. So that's affecting his numbers as well. But that second game against the Yankees was actually pretty good, even though he walked 3 guys. He's got to keep that down, but he only allowed 1 run in 5 innings. So over the last 2 starts, he's gone 13 2/3 innings combined over those 2 and only allowed 1 earned run. And he's got an 8.4 strikeout walk ratio, which isn't great, but still, it's not horrific. So he's starting to pitch better. So I like that. He's trending in the right direction. Dodgers have seen him a lot, but he's done okay against the Dodgers. They're 38 for 145 off him lifetime, although they do have a lot of extra base hits off him, 11 doubles, 8 home runs. He does only have a 37-16 strikeout walk ratio against him, so too many walks. But it is a 262 opponent batting average against him, so that's mediocre. So I think Gausman is good enough and the better pitcher in this matchup. So I still like it. 262 doesn't really tell me there's like a huge matchup edge one way or the other there. That's a mediocre batting average that he's given up against him. And 839 OPS is a decent OPS for those hitters, but still, I like Gausman in this one. You're getting Toronto in this spot. They actually were an underdog, but the line is moving towards them as the favorite here. The market indicators are on Toronto here, even though I see that it looks like they open at minus 125. I don't think they did, because I saw Toronto as a slight underdog. I saw LA as like a minus 110 favorite or something a little while ago. And LA has 71% of the tickets, 57% of the cash coming in on the other side on Toronto, which has moved the line back to Toronto being a favorite. You can get Toronto at a lot of different prices right now. The line's kind of all over the place. Most books actually still have LA being the favorite. So it looks like the line did move to LA being a favorite. Now it's swinging back in the other direction. So maybe that was a setup move or something. It's those guys coming in trying to play maybe even both sides as money line underdogs. I like Toronto for all those reasons. On the market, looks like it is in agreement with me, especially now with this later move, moving the line back in the Toronto direction. I got Toronto at minus 104. So that's what I'm going to do. I think they're in the better situational spot, and they have the better starting pitcher in this one. So I like it. And the market looks like it's in agreement with it. I'll be on Toronto. First total I'm going to be on, I told you I'm going to be on 2 unders. This one I like. It's Yankees Brewers. I'm going to take this one under 8.5. You can get the 8.5. It's out there right now, I think readily available right now. 8.5 at the minus 110 price. This line looks like it was 8.5 juice to the over, though, at some point. It's gone down to just the straight 8.5. Looks like pros versus Joe's situation in the market on the total here, with 58% of the tickets coming in on the over, but 59% of the cash. So some of the smarter money, it looks like, coming in on the under, which we do see the line has moved down a little bit on the total, coming in towards the under. This is a spot where I like to take an under, man. You have a total that's at a decent number, too, at 8.5. And it's a starting pitching matchup that looks pretty good for it. The bullpen situation, I don't think is too bad. And yesterday, the Yankees won 15-3. Both games in the series have been very high scoring. The first game was a 7-6 Brewers win, and yesterday was 15-3. So who in their right mind is going to want to come in and play an under in this one? With these two offenses, these two teams are known for being able to hit. These two teams are good offensively. No one's going to want to come in and play an under here, man. But this is a rubber match of the series. It's a pretty big interleague series. I think both teams are going to want to show up in this one. And I think we're getting a decent price on this under here. Like I said, yesterday, huge, just a very, very high-scoring game yesterday. So I think we're going to see some regression back to lower scoring here. And in that game yesterday, neither team really had to use their bullpen much. Both starters went into the game a decent extent. Brewers only used 3 relievers. And they kind of wound up saving some of their better relievers here, using Miller for 2 innings to just kind of end the game in a blowout, just kind of go in and eat up the last couple innings. And the Yankees only used 2 relievers as well, and had Weaver come in and eat up a couple innings too. So neither team really burned out their bullpen or anything like that here. So some of the better relievers in both teams' bullpens are going to be available in this one. And then looking at the starting pitching matchup, I like it, man. Marcus Stroman going for the Yankees. He's been good this year, 2.93 ERA, although, of course, it's factored into the total here. He has a 1.23 whip, which is a little bit higher. It's indicative that his ERA should probably be a bit higher than that, maybe like somewhere in the high 3s, but he's been pretty good overall. He has 28 strikeouts and 27 2/3. He does have 10 walks, so he's got to keep that number down. He's only allowed 24 hits, so he hasn't been very hittable, which is good. 4 home runs allowed is a little bit too much, but he's pitched well, man. He's only allowed 4 earned runs once against Miami somehow. Maybe he just wasn't totally focused on a bad Miami offense. I don't know what the case might be. He was coming off a nice divisional performance against Toronto. Other than that, he's only allowed 3 earned runs in the rest of the, at most 3 earned runs in the rest of the starts. And besides that one, he's only allowed 2 earned runs in the other one. So in the other ones, he's allowed 2, 0, 0. And then in those 2, he allowed 3 and 4. So he has not allowed a lot of runs in any of these starts, earned runs. But he hasn't allowed any unearned runs. Or no, he did. He allowed 3 unearned runs in the Houston game. But what's weird is that he's actually pitched better in the step-up games. He's pitched better against the better offenses he's faced. His best starts were a shutout against Houston, a shutout against Toronto, and then he was in a tough spot where he had to face Toronto again right away almost, 2 starts later where Toronto had just seen him recently. He didn't do that bad in that one either, only allowed 2 runs. So his 2 worst starts are against the worst offenses that he faced, and his best starts have been against the better offenses. So he's like stepping it up more in the bigger games and maybe just not having focus against the worst offenses he's playing. So I kind of like that aspect of this. So Stroman seems like he's pitching better in the bigger games. I like that. And this is, of course, one of those against a good Milwaukee offense. This is a pretty big game. And the Brewers hitters against him haven't done that great against him. They're 16 for 65 off him lifetime with only 1 double, 2 home runs. He has a 20-8 strikeout walk ratio against him. 246 opponent batting average is what that is. So he's held them down for the most part. It's a pretty low batting average, a 683 OPS. Fairly low OPS there, too. So Stroman, good stats in his career against the Milwaukee hitters. And on the other side, this is a situation I like, man. Tobias Myers, he even flew under my radar. I didn't realize that he even got called up. He made his major league debut in his previous game against Pittsburgh 5 days ago last week. And I completely missed that. That must have been a situation where Pittsburgh changed their start at last minute or something like that after I did the rundown, because I run down all these games in the morning. So sometimes the pitching matchup changes or whatever. So I missed that Myers got called up. Myers, he's been pretty good in the minors, man. After he's had a couple of stretches that weren't as good in the minors, but he's now been turning it on. And he's been very difficult to hit in the minors. He has some good stuff, man, especially his 4-seam fastball, which even though he only throws it in the low mid 90s, somewhere around 94 miles an hour, he has an insane movement, upward movement on his 4-seam fastball that's more extreme than has almost ever been seen before, according to his scouting reports. They measure the vertical move on the 4-seam fastball, and the average, I think, in the MLB is an 18. I don't even know what they measured, an 18, whatever that 18 means. I don't know exactly what it means, but the upward movement of his fastball, 20 is considered to be extreme, and his is above 20. So, him entering the majors based on pitchers that have thrown more than 50 4-seam fastballs or something, his vertical upward movement on his 4-seam fastball is 5th in Major League Baseball, and which causes hitters to be really fooled because they think that the 4-seam fastball is going to come in at a certain point, and it winds up coming in significantly higher than it actually does. So that upward movement has hitters thinking a ball is going to be in the zone, and they swing at it, and it winds up being up above where their bat actually is, and they miss. His whiff percentage is actually quite high in the minors, somewhere in the high 30% range, 38%, which is quite high. I mentioned, I forget who it was, and I mentioned some guy had a 40% whiff rate in the minors, which is insane. But Myers also has a very insane whiff rate. So I like this guy, man. So he has good stuff. He has some really crazy stuff. I know he's been developing some of his off-speed pitches as well, a slider, I guess, has some crazy movement on it too, although it's kind of still a work in progress. It's still developing, but this guy seems like he has good stuff. His first start in the majors was pretty good against Pittsburgh. Even though they lost, he went 5 innings, only allowed 4 hits, 1 earned run on a solo homer, and had a 4-1 strikeout walk ratio. They let him go 83 pitches. So I like this, man. He gets to come in and face the New York Yankees. So does that mean the nerves are going to get to him, or is he going to step up? Because he didn't seem like he was nervous in that Major League debut, and now he has that first start out of the way. So those jitters that you might have in that opening day might be out of the way too. So he seems like he's a good pitcher, man. And he's probably going to be ready to go. And I don't know if the nerves are going to get to him. I think he might be pumped up to face the Yankees here in this game. And of course, because he only has 1 Major League start ever, that means the Yankees have never seen him before. So he has the advantage there too. I always talk about these young pitchers who have good stuff facing these lineups who have never seen him before. That's an advantage to the pitcher there. The hitters usually struggle the first time seeing this guy, especially a guy like this that has that crazy vertical movement on the fastball. The Yankees are probably not going to be used to seeing that right away. So I think he has the early advantage there. So we're getting 8.5 on this total, which I think is skewed up a little bit because these teams have good offenses, and scores have been high in the series, so we'll take that one under the 8.5. And then the final under that I'm on in the later afternoon slate here is going to be the Pirates Giants game. We're going to take this one under, which this one worries me a little bit more because of the bullpen situation, but we do see the market looks like it's coming in on the under in this one too, even though it's an insanely low total. It's 7.5. Maybe it's not even insane enough though. We saw it open 7.5 juice to the over. It's now 7.5 juice to the under. 53% of the tickets on the over, but 69% of the cash coming in on the under. So it looks like the smarter money, the bigger bets, more respected money coming in on the under here. You can still get under the 7.5 at -110. I think it's still out there. You may be losing it though. It looks like it's headed towards the 7.5 being juice. I think you might be able to find the books that are still the stragglers that still have the 7.5 under -110 still out there though. And this is all about the starting pitching matchup again, man. I don't like the fact that this game went into extra innings yesterday, sure, but the team still didn't even score that much in an extra inning game. It was 4-3, and even that score was actually misleading because 5 of those 7 runs were scored all in the 10th inning, so it was a 1-1 game going into extra innings. So these teams have not been scoring a lot. I mean, these offenses aren't like the greatest offenses. But the one thing that worries me the most about this play, making it a full game play, of course, is that both teams used 4 of their relievers yesterday in a close extra innings game. They used some of their better relievers, so the bullpen situation isn't exactly the best for this, but I'm still going to do it here. I don't like the first 4. The first 4 innings, you're only getting like a 3.5 line on this, which is just crazy low. And if you even want to play the under the 4, I think you have to lay like -120 or -125 on it. So I still think the full game total is the way to go. And when the books put out a line this low, like 7.5, they're basically telling you something's up here and that they expect this to really be a low scoring game here. The books, a lot of times when the books put out a total that looks like really, really high, they're telling you something and you kind of want to go over on that one. But the books, when they put out a line that's like really, really low, the books are also telling you something. You tend to actually want to play the under in that one. Which seems a little bit counterintuitive, but maybe when that is the case, you maybe not be getting like as much value as you quite want in that one. But the books are indicating that they really think that game, when they put out a high total, is really going to be high scoring, or as is the case here, they think the game is going to be really low scoring. Look at the starting pitching matchup, man. Neither team has been seen before by the opposing hitter, so I think it's an advantage to both starting pitchers. They're both young guns who have been pitching really well this season, and neither opposing lineup has ever seen these starting pitchers before. So that's an advantage to both starting pitchers, man. The hitters are completely unfamiliar with both of these guys. They're both young, and they've both been pitching well. Keaton Winn, 3.54 ERA this year, 1.04 whip, which was also his whip last year in his debut season. Over both seasons, he has a 58-17 strikeout walk ratio, although it's in 70 1/3 innings, so his strikeout rate isn't that high, but he's been quite good, though, man, just in general. This season, he's got a 23-9 strikeout walk ratio in 28 innings, only allowed 20 hits, so he's been hard to hit. Strikeout walk numbers are good. He doesn't walk that many guys. His strikeout, like I said, he doesn't come in and totally mow hitters down, but his strikeout rate isn't horrible either, but all the numbers are pretty good, man. Strikeout walk numbers are good. He looks consistent as well over his 2 seasons so far in the majors. His numbers have been quite consistent. And he's dropped his ERA from where it was last year, although his whip is the same as last year, which kind of indicates that last year his ERA probably should have been lower than it was. So I like Keaton Winn, and then I like Jared Jones, baby. I've been involved in every single one of Jared Jones' starts, although I think I'm only 2-2 in them, maybe 3-2 now. Am I 3-2 in them now? I forget. But I was on him. I don't even know what I am, but I was on him in his debut. Then I was on the under in his next game, and then I lost on him, I think, once or twice, and then I was on him in the Milwaukee game. I believe I was on him. I was either on him or the under in that one. I forget. Whichever it was, it won. I'm going to go back to him again, man. He's got a 2.79 ERA this year, 0.83 whip. He's got an insane 39-4 strikeout walk ratio in 29 innings, only 20 hits allowed. He's allowed 5 home runs, which is really the only drawback. Somehow that's only translated to 9 earned runs. So the home runs are really the only thing that's been bad about him. He's allowed mostly solo home runs. He's got to keep that down. But other than that, his strikeout numbers are crazy high, well over 1 an inning. Strikeout walk numbers just totally insane too. He's been a force, man. both of these pitchers have been pitching well, especially Jones, and he's only in his first major league season. That's going to do it for me, man. That's it. Both of these pitchers, I like the under here. Peace.